Bill is connected to the audio. Hi, Bill. You want to unmute? Okay, meeting's called to order at 7 o'clock. All Board of Selectmen members are present. We have a guest. We have Paul Varga. Paul, did you have anything to say? Let's see, hear from public? Anybody need something to say? Okay, first Selectmen's briefing. It's been a exciting couple of weeks. All right, I'm still working with the budget figures. We found that there were a couple of big numbers that were missing from the report that we received. And I've now included those, and I'm double checking all of the rest of the numbers. The selectmen are going to be going through this with a fine tooth comb on Saturday. And what I'll do is send out everything ahead of time for us to go through and make any adjustments we need to make. The other things that are going on are pretty much on the agenda. Let me just see if there's anything else here. Yes, we know that we have received a request from the Farmers Commission. What am I supposed to call it? Ashford Ag Commission. For changing a couple of changes in the ordinances, actually 3. And that's being reviewed by the assessor. She's going to provide me with some detailed information, and what I'd like to do is put that on the agenda for our next meeting. The other things that are going on, let's just see. Everything else is.
Catherine, could we get copies of that request? Take a look at?
Sure. What she's doing is a full write-up for me, because I also want to understand the financial impacts, and she's going to try and give us that as well.
Bill, I put copies of what Paul Varga bought in there in your box here.
Oh, what did
Thank
we-
you, sir.
I just brought copies of my budget and that email that you and I exchanged just because I was gonna talk
Perfect,
about it.
because that breaks it down.
Right. So I forgot that Bill may not be here in person. I just thought it'd be easier than having me to reread everything.
I think he already has a copy.
Well, anyway, I made a copy.
Okay. What I would like to do, let me just think here. As far as the rest of the first selectmen's briefing, I've been approached for the town of Wellington's historic one of their commissions is looking to clean up an area of property in Wellington that is part of the Ruby Fenton Park. And they want to do a pass-through on what is really, it feels like the old West Howie Road over to Lustig, to be able to take things out through that road. And it's kind of a questionable area as to who owns it. So they'd like to get together with the homeowners that live in that area, and certainly sit with me and with Mike D'Amato. And we're going to go through and just get our bearings in terms of what they're really asking for. So that'll be happening over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's the same without seeing the request, but we did have a request from the Board of Selectmen in Wellington last year, I believe, about that area. And Chris had done some research on it.
Okay.
If we're talking about the same thing, and the road was actually officially closed by the town.
Apparently it was closed in the old days.
And the road by I guess it's by statute, then refers back to the owners in that area. So you said Mike is going to research that and update you a little bit on it?
Yeah,
or?
he said it was I guess the dicey part was that whatever happened with the road happened a long time ago.
Yep.
And it wasn't the way you'd typically close or abandon a road. And so it doesn't you know, by today's standards, it doesn't fit that. But what we're gonna do is make sure we understand exactly what its status is. And then work with the people in Wellington to see what it is they actually want and where they intend to be going.
Yep.
Okay, really what they need is to be able to take dismantle a couple of buildings that are over there. And take the stuff out. All right, I don't think I have anything else that's new, other than, oh, I'd like us to consider looking at a blight ordinance, a very narrow blight ordinance. And I'm working with Mike Tomato on that as well. And it is really for any empty buildings. In other words, empty houses. We have a few in town that are definitely look like a blight problem. And he said that's an easier way to get them cleaned up than going through court. You can actually, if you have the blight ordinance, you can actually take some action without having to get in line and wait forever in court.
Yeah,
So I'll
you
get
might
more.
want to, you might want to talk to Duncan about that too, because
I
I know
will.
I also did a little research and he had done, and he's Hollering and Sage had drafted similar blight ordinances that you're referring to, you know, a simpler, less full-blown blight ordinance.
Actually, yes. He had talked with Ken Slater.
Yeah,
And it's a blight code for an unoccupied dwelling. So I asked him if he would craft something for us to look at.
good.
Okay.
So you have talked to Duncan already?
No, I didn't talk to Duncan, but I talked to Mike, who talked to Duncan.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
not to Duncan, but to Ken Slater,
Mhm.
because he worked with him apparently on the Willington piece.
Yep.
They have something. We also are looking at an issue in the Lakewoods Lane subdivision that has to do with a road there that was not properly constructed.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that case.
Figure. Okay, so I talked with him yesterday, no, this morning about that. Okay. And so I intend to set up a meeting with to make sure we get everything laid out so everybody understands where we stand on this and what people are really asking for at this point. Also, I talked with
I mean, what prompted that, Catherine, you're probably aware of it. Joe Kalinowski called to my attention that that road was deteriorating and that the town had never officially accepted
correct.
that road.
Yep, except
And
that
that
Mike
there
Sambo
was,
signed off on the bond.
yeah, there was a bond issue, and then for some reason that bond was cut in half, which is nowhere near what it will cost to bring that up to a par that we're satisfied with. And Mike didn't recall that either. But I know Mike D'Amato has been working on that, and
Yeah,
I'm sure you'll see a file on that.
yeah. He actually told me he'd provide me one. You said it was cut in half. It was $100,000 bond. I thought it was actually released.
No, it was cut in half, if I recall.
All right.
Where is this road again, please?
This is it's off of Campert. Part of it's in
Lake,
Eastford.
Lake,
Yep, yep, I know.
Lakeview off of Moon Road.
Yep,
And so apparently there's a disagreement about the scope of what needs to be done with the road.
Yeah, Sil had come in and, you know, our engineer, and did some testing, supervised some testing and that on that road and made some recommendations. And that's where it was a bit contested from the developers that Sil was asking for a little too much. And we agreed that they could bring in their own, a third party engineer, so we can get another opinion. As far as I know, and Mike D'Amato can fill you in, that's where it was left off. I don't
Right.
ever remember seeing the report from the
And
third party engineer.
if I understand correctly, we hired Joe from Nathan Jacobson, and the developer paid for us
Right.
to use that as a resource, as a
Right.
unbiased resource. Okay, so we talked about that. So going back to Wellington's approach, about the property that where the Ruby Fenton is. This the Wellington Conservation Commission. And it's an open space, what they want is an open space watershed agreement. So we actually have a watershed agreement for out in that area, near where the Langhammer property is. And when I
Mhm.
was researching the Langhammer property, I found it, and you and Ralph and Mike signed it, and it's a big watershed agreement that covers a lot of different groups. Okay, all right. That's all I have for the selectmen's briefing at this time. Acceptance of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 5th. You have those minutes?
I briefed them.
Have you seen them?
17.
I up on the web to get them, but I did brief them.
Yeah. And Bill, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you weren't going to be here. I had something I was going to give you. That the other gentlemen have. Okay. Take a minute and look at those.
Yep.
Okay, Bill, are you all set with those minutes? Do you want to make a motion?
I am. So
I'll
moved, accepted as presented.
Okay, and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Here from boards, commissions, committees. I don't think we have anything tonight.
Catherine, just
Uh,
very briefly, this is Luther Brauk. I'm from the Ag Commission. Very happy to help in any way with the assessor if she needs any further information as she compiles a report for you folks.
No, I think she's fine, but thank you.
Great.
Hi, Jeff. You've joined too.
Hello, Ms. Silversmith. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to bring up that we had sent an email out, or I had sent an email out to a number of the boards and commissions. This is regarding the Plan of Conservation and Development that's due for July of 2025. And I know there've been some issues with email receipt and such. I sent it to the first selectman, to Chris, and to the first selectman box to Chris and to Paul Varga. What we're asking each of the individual boards and commissions to look at is that section, and I included the electronic section of the current POCD from 2015. We're looking for any format you want to do, but if you're looking to write a narrative, if you're looking to get bullets and highlights, any type of update. And I sent a copy to Paul Varga also, especially on the public safety section.
He has it.
Okay. And again, we're not looking for, the sooner you get it to us, the better, but we're not looking for response until the end of May on that. So we can come together as a group and start moving forward approximately 14 months prior to the actual need for having the POCD completed and approved. So again, I just wanted to bring that up as what our intentions are. We went out to the Conservation Commission, we went out to the Ag Commission, we sent out to Clean Energy Task Force, all various sections to ask for updates to those sections. Again, any format any information you wish to share or update or change or correct, or anything you see there, we'd appreciate any input you can share with us.
Was there anything sent to Our Town, Our Future by any chance?
No, but we have a number of the members on the board there. I've spoken with Mike Gantic before about this, and we'll be following up with them with a separate request and review for information that they think should be included. Again, as we try to bring in both the official commissions as well as the community to give input on the POCD.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other commissions, committees, boards? Okay, old business. School roof replacement. We got responses to the RFP. They've been provided to the committee to review. And Chris, did you have anything you wanted to add to that one? I think they're setting up a meeting. You're on mute.
I found my, I found myself. Now we got 2 responses to the RFP request. They have been forwarded to the construction committee to evaluate. And Jim expects to call sooner rather than later a building committee meeting with the architect and the solar guy and make a decision on a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen for a clerk.
And to refresh everybody's memory, this is again for the clerk of the work. Okay. Discuss and act on ACE equipment logging requests accessing the Cattle Rock property. I met with the forester. Now I'm blanking out his name. To talk about this particular request and reviewed the file. There's a bit of a concern that he has that he really didn't write up, but he did say there's a number of steps they would need to go through in order to be able to go on our property to do this. They're talking about cutting a trail through Cattle Rock, not sticking to the road that's there. So, and he expressed some concerns about the logging company that the A&S or A&J want to use, because there have been some issues with that company in other towns to the point where they were issued violations and apparently didn't know about a very standard form that you have to file with the state when you're logging. So he mentioned that there's I need to do some more research with that and see if we have something that the town council can draw up for a contract on this that has everything in it. But this is the one where we're talking about them maybe putting up a bond. But there's more to it than that. They have to, it's how do you make sure that property actually ends up in the same state it was in? And which is kind of difficult to do when they're carving a new path through the forest. Again, there's something that doesn't feel right about this particular one for me. And I think it's because I'm not confident that the logging company is going to actually adhere to what they're saying they would do. And they haven't really written that down. So we're writing it down for them.
Yeah, it's since they originally came in last year with that request, and Duncan did draw up, as you folks are aware, there was an agreement that I would not sign until we had everybody to sign off, because our inland wetlands,
Yes.
Bruce Fitzbeck was quite concerned. And it turns out they wanted to get in there in October, November, but preferably when winter came in,
Yes.
because of wetness in the area, that they felt it'd be easier to work at the ground. Well, with the season that we've had this year, it's probably lucky they didn't go in there at all.
I'm grateful they didn't go into that. They probably would have gotten stuck if not, aside from the fact that it would have damaged
I
things.
can only imagine the mess. And there were a couple of wetland crossings that they failed to identify on their original plan.
Yes.
That Bruce came up with. So there's still a lot of work to be done on that.
So also Bruce is resigning.
I'm sorry to hear that.
He's taking a full-time position in Pomfret. I believe it's Pomfret.
Do you have a timeline on that, Catherine?
No, I don't yet. Okay, that was new news. So, but I did meet with him and he was very pleasant to talk with and very knowledgeable. He was extremely helpful.
Long history. Even I understand his father and his grandfather were doing the same sort of thing
Exactly.
before him. So it's multi-generational.
Yes.
You've got a couple of maps there in the office that his dad had drawn up,
Oh,
wetland
really?
maps. Yep.
Cool. Okay, moving on to the next one. Finalize town building use fee schedule and Ashford Food Bank donation policy. So I have cleared it in terms of how we would take in monies, checks made out to the town of Ashford. Going through our, Melissa's department. And also, that she can, write checks to the food bank. So if someone says they want the money to go to the food bank, that's where it's going. The, other part of this was met with, I've talked with a couple of the people who run, activities that are more commercial in nature than what other people are using these buildings for. And in talking with them, they were perfectly willing to increase the amount they charge the vendors that they bring in for tables. And come up with good amounts to give us. In fact, in one situation, we would make, instead of $50, it's 102, just based upon the vendors that they have for a particular venue. And that seems to be reasonably well accepted that they would do that. So I don't have the fee schedule written up, but I have at least, talked with these groups to say, this is what we'd like to do because it is a commercial venture that they're putting on. For anything that's not, then they have the normal fee schedule that we have. Any comments
Catherine,
about that?
You had mentioned at a previous meeting, and I thought it was a good idea, that perhaps we draft up some sort of a form. I still think that's a good idea. You might want to run it by council once you
I will.
draft something up, but
I
I
will.
think
I've
that
actually
would be a
been,
good
I've been
idea.
looking for one from another town. So
Yeah.
definitely run it by council.
So if John Doe was to rent that, he's a resident in town, it would be $50 use fee. And he would also write a $50 separate check for $50 for a cleaning deposit, which would be returned or torn up at their pleasure
Right,
once they give the key back and we inspect it.
right,
Is that correct?
correct. And
And
actually, I would rather we were calling it a donation because of a rental fee makes it kind of a little
That's
more
fine.
complicated.
That's fine.
Yeah.
That's why probably some sort of a one-page simplified form would be able to
Yep.
explain that. But now, if John Doe writes that $50 check,
Yes,
he can indicate to the food bank. It would go, Melissa will distribute it.
yes,
You can
not
indicate
a
to the
problem.
food bank or for another purpose to be designated by Melissa.
Exactly. And not only that, in writing it, for example, something for the food bank, she expects to get a receipt. Okay, so that we have fully tracked the money coming in and going
Yeah.
out.
Okay. Related to that, Catherine, that $800 that was
We're
called to your
pursuing that
attention.
as well. That's
Okay.
been a kind of, it's actually, I didn't realize it until a couple days ago. It's a savings account, not a checking account. And that's why
Okay.
money was not taken out of it. So they're trying to
Okay.
figure out essentially how to get into it.
Okay.
And all of those monies are targeted for the food bank.
Good.
That's why they were donated. And so that's where they
Yep.
should go.
Yep.
Did you have something you
Oh,
wanted to ask?
that was exactly.
Okay. Update on status of firehouse roof repair. Hey, we got the guy here.
I still have not heard from either contractor. Chris
Okay.
talked to Dan on Friday, and he said hopefully sometime early this week.
Okay,
So I guess if I don't see anything tomorrow, I'll contact him and I'll contact the other gentleman as well.
right, right.
And if we need a third one, which would be, it's up to you guys.
Right. It's up to all of us.
The assessment is so far that the roof needs to be replaced.
So roof needs to be replaced.
Some of that,
Well, yeah,
some of that damage to the plumbing is kind of.
yeah.
Also, you did a little more digging on the insurance.
Insurance.
Why don't you
yeah.
share that one
Okay,
too?
so the the department does insure the building. Hang on, I got the number here right in front of me. I lied. That's the cost. The fire department does insure the building as well as the contents. So the building is insured for $2,526,950. But our policy includes, how does he word it? Guaranteed replacement cost. So if the building were completely destroyed, it would be, the insurance company would pay the amount to rebuild the entire building. And it also, it's a $1,000 deductible, and it also includes a $1 million flood and earthquake coverage automatically built into the policy.
Thank you.
Catherine, could I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I would run that by Ken Slater or Duncan. Having
What am
been
I
in the
running?
insurance,
So Bill, just,
What am I running by them?
Yeah, I know what your question is. I talked with our rep. That's a common practice. They do it for many, many departments who use municipal buildings.
Who does what?
The insurance company, Smith.
Yeah,
It's actually, it says McNeil on the top, but it's McNeil and Company. So there's many, like, for instance, Columbia is an example where the town built the building or funded the building.
yeah,
That's a common practice, and it actually, he was looking into our actual written policy to see if the town was part of, like, if you have a mortgage, same idea.
right.
That can be added with putting the town on there if it's not already there.
All right. So what is it you want me to ask town council, Bill?
well, it's been a while since I looked at the lease that we had with the fire department. But I know there's a term we used in the insurance industry quite a bit, that a building, you couldn't insure my house. Now, if the lease agreement specifically states otherwise, that's laid out in it. But it's called a non-insurable interest.
Right.
And I would just run it by. I mean, I appreciate this is the way it's been being done, but I find it a little unusual. Typically, a tenant, which the fire department is in the true sense of the term there,
Yeah.
would have insurance for liability. They would have insurance, although they're covered under KERMA under our umbrella,
Yeah,
but they would have insurance for contents, equipment, contents, everything else. The building itself would typically, from my understanding, be under the coverage of the town of Ashford.
right.
And at minimum, we should make sure that we are co-insured on whatever insurance policy there is on our building.
Got it. Thank you.
That's right.
Okay. So again, we're waiting on the quote.
Yeah,
Schedule Board of Selectmen working budget meeting. That's for Saturday at 9.
Catherine, I have one more question for Paul.
Sure.
Paul, when you say the entire roof, and I know at a previous meeting you had mentioned to us that there was some rot involved in some of the underwood and the trusses. Is that what you're talking about, bringing it right down to the trusses?
no, bringing it down to the plywood, replacing whatever sheathing needs to be replaced, and then putting new shingles on it.
Okay.
I mean,
And how about the rot damage? I mean, is that a separate issue or?
as of right now, the rot damage is only in the sheathing. There was one truss that was questionable, but my understanding was when Dan McClintock looked at it, he said it's not something that we need to worry about. Now, if he changes it in the quote, I don't know.
Okay.
So
And have you had a chance to check with the solar company to see if they have any responsibility
Yeah,
Um,
the only responsibility they would hold is where the damage was from the drilled holes that they filled, so.
That they already patched.
That they already patched them, and then unfortunately, that actually is not the worst area of rot.
okay,
It's more on the north, imagine that, more on the north side is where the worst of the, I mean, the roof is going on 20 years old.
yeah.
I think guaranteed for 30 years.
That's what the box says on the shingles. It's a 15 year, well, I actually sent it to Chris, I think it was a 10-year workmanship warranty and a 15-year warranty on the shingle. I can't remember how it was worded.
So what I did do, Paul, you had sent an email with a link to pictures that were taken.
Right.
I noticed that that was going to expire on March 3rd. So what I did was I did a copy paste and sent the pictures to these two.
Okay.
I-
Yeah, and that was, it took me a while to figure out how to get those to move forward. So,
I was amazed
yeah,
that, yeah.
yeah.
So you have the pictures that were sent to you in an email. And there's quite a few of them.
Yeah, that was the gentleman that the solar company sent out.
Okay.
So I have not seen any pictures or anything from Dan as of yet, McClintock as of yet.
Paul, on these contractors you've talked to, have you talked to to them about any alternatives other than the typical asbestos tile?
No, I did not. I mean, that's something that the town could pursue. It's a town building. Yeah, like
Yeah.
metal roofing or something. Yeah, I mean, it depends on where you want to spend the money.
Wouldn't the noise with metal roofing, does that
No,
factor?
I have it on my house. I would never go back and.
Well, that's right, you do.
Well, the fact
Yeah,
that.
no, and what guarantee do you have on, you said you have it on your house, Paul?
Yeah, it's a 25-year damage guarantee, lifetime guarantee on the galvanum.
Because I've
so
seen, I've done a little research and did some looking at the metal roofs for different alternatives, and they call them lifetime guarantees. I'm wondering what that actually means. Is it my lifetime or the roof's lifetime?
It's a standing seam metal roof. Yeah, well, that was my question too, but at my lifetime, and then I don't care anymore, so.
Your kids or your wife might though.
It was,
Their
it was,
problem.
at the time I did it on my house, it was approximately 3 times the initial install. But I'm never gonna have to worry about putting a roof on my house. So if you do that out, I have already put one on a rental house, you know, after 15 years, you're putting a new roof on. I've been in my house going on 15 years. I'd be looking at a new roof already. And I don't have to worry about that cost. Now, I don't know what it would be. I'm just saying that's what it was. I know it's substantially more expensive initial install for metal. And that's the standing seam, which is, I mean, that's better than the others, the
Right.
corrugated, yeah.
Right.
Because the corrugated, you're just drilling holes in and it's the same thing as a shingle. It just looks prettier. That's what I have on my barn, because it's a barn,
Right.
yeah. And I don't think McClintock or the other gentleman, I can't remember that company. I don't believe they do. Standing seam is a pretty exclusive, different type of roofing. It's a,
Okay,
Okay. All right.
thanks.
Okay, so the working budget meeting is for Saturday morning. The discuss and act on award of ARPA, well, first of all, on that working budget meeting, what happened was $170,000 was left out of the report that we were looking at before. So we have a huge increase that we need to look at and see where we can pare it down. You know, beyond what we already were looking at. The next thing is the discuss and act on award of ARPA small business loans as recommended by the Economic Development Commission. I provided,
Catherine, just to go back to that,
Oh.
I know we had a brief discussion. You were gonna try to meet with the rec committee and the chairman and the director.
yes, I did. I
Um,
had a meeting with them this afternoon. It went on for well over 2 hours.
I assume the budget issue was discussed.
The budget issue was discussed and I also made a recommendation, or I made it clear that the amount of monies that we're bringing in from our programs are not enough. and to pursue, and certainly with both the chair and with the director here. They both understood that very well, and they're going to be looking at programs in other towns. They hadn't been looking at them recently. At least our director had not been. So the push is on to bring in some programs that are actually going to also bring in some more money.
That establishment of the revolving account that we talked about, I know Sherry Susie originally brought it up a year or so ago.
You mean the fund?
Yeah, may help with that.
When you say the revolving account, you
Well,
do mean
this would be,
a
right
recreation
now,
fund?
right now, if there's a function and there's a fee involved in people signing up, as I understand it, those fees don't go back to the rec commission, they go into the general fund.
Yes.
What Sherry was talking about, they do in Sterling and they used to do in Brooklyn,
Yeah.
and I understand a number of other towns. It would go into the operating fund to generate more programs, which in turn then generate more revenue.
And I would call that operating fund, it has a name. It is I think it's a
It's probably not
Park and
revolving, but
Recreation Fund, something like
Okay.
that, which does exist. And then they could draw from that. What they'd end up doing is, in a sense, overdrawing their budget, and that would pull from that account. If I
yeah, I know we had discussed it very briefly when Sherry originally brought it up, and I also had mentioned it to the Board of Finance a few times.
Okay,
Not only for the rec department, but also for senior center.
thank you.
I think that's something, perhaps, if you get a chance, Catherine,
I think that's a
um,
great idea.
look into
I'll
that.
look into it. Okay. On the small business loans, these ARPA small business loans, I gave you the information in a summary during our last meeting. And the box of the ARPA submissions, or the submissions, are here. I don't know if anybody's gone through them, but I'd really like to get moving on this, because these people, we're now getting phone calls. People are asking, hey, did I get one? When will it be dispersed? So would it be possible to get a motion from the two of you to proceed with this? What we'll do is they've got to fill out I think it's a W-9. And also, we'll make sure that we have the appropriate write-up and sign-offs for them to do this.
I'd be glad to make a motion, and then, have the floor open for some brief discussion, but
Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendations of the Economic Development Commission
yeah,
regarding the ARPA fund to help small businesses in town.
Perfectly second that.
and we got a second. Okay, so let's. Oh. All right, discussion.
The reason I made my motion, and I feel strongly about it, economic development, and I thank their membership, their chairman and vice chairman, very much for their work on this from the very beginning. And I realize the due diligence that they have done. And I'm perfectly comfortable knowing the criteria they used for going over the applications and everything. I'm perfectly comfortable with supporting their recommendations, and thank them adamantly for their hard work on this.
Thank you so much. That was really well said.
I've got nothing to add.
They did a great job. I love how they laid things out and did their measurement of in different groups.
Very, very professional.
Very professional. So with that, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. They'll be very pleased. And our thanks, as Bill has said, our thanks to the Economic Development Commission for their fine work on this. Okay. New business. What I'd like to do before we, as part of new business, since we don't have anybody waiting here, I'd like to let's see, get down here. Let me know, Paul. What I'd like to do is have Paul speak to the fire department budget request tonight. He's here. You should have more detail from what was written up before. So I need that added to the agenda, either as the first thing in new business or somewhere along that line.
Move that.
Okay,
Second,
Just for you, Captain, this is what I'm
thank you.
going on.
Perfect. All in favor of adding it?
aye.
Okay, why don't we go right into that? Paul, thank you so much for bringing this. Thank you for also the write-up that you gave, that you sent to me that really broke it down quite well.
Yeah, no problem. So just so for everybody who wanted to watch this meeting later, there's a copy of the budget as submitted. I also made a copy for the two other selectmen of the questions you had asked and I answered, and then because the staff breakdown is such an integral part of the budget, I included how that number was derived.
Mhm.
Just to kind of show what we use as a template. I think the biggest thing is of course, the paid staff line and the wages line was the biggest increase. I can speak to some of the others, but it's kind of the routine things. Insurance is going up, fuel is going up. Utilities are going up, although we're working very hard to reduce some of our other utility costs, as in cable and internet, et cetera. So we left that line flat because I think we're gonna be able to cut back on some of the other stuff. We're still working on it, but we're getting it. And then, of course, just again, repairs are costing more, maintenance is costing more. I think the only other big thing was really insurance going on. The other items that we changed,
Who do you have insurance with,
McNeil,
McNeil? Thanks.
Smith Brothers, AKA McNeil, I guess. But Smith Brothers is our agent, McNeil is the carrier.
Mhm.
The only other, I guess, substantial change, if you're looking at it, is I try to explain a little bit better in the budget package that the actual ambulance itself and its operating, other than the staff, are covered by revenue generated from transports. So the town doesn't actually assist in the actual ambulance itself. They just provide the funding for the staff to cover the ambulance. But what we were not accounting for previously in the department is replacing that ambulance in a timely manner. We kept, and this was a problem previously with the defib units. We were not accounting for replacement costs. We're purchasing the items somehow, whether it's a grant or ARPA funding or a loan, but we're never thinking about how do we replace it. So we made some adjustments in that estimated ambulance revenue offset so that we could take more of the revenue and put it into the replacement cost of the ambulance where it needs to go. While it looks like the ambulance revenue went down, it's expected to go up based on call volume. But we need to use some of that funding to replace that ambulance and not, if you will, put it other places.
This is kind of on the line of what was talked about at the capital improvement meeting,
Right.
which was great, being proactive
We
in
need a
terms,
plan, right?
yeah, having a plan
And-
for it.
And we have had a plan, our 5-year or 10-year plan as well. Has
Right.
been there, but what they haven't been doing is accounting for how to fund that. And I'm trying to, things are kind of popping up and I'm trying to, I feel like
Yeah.
I'm putting out flyers as the fire department. Hey, imagine that. Okay, so then we'll get, I thought that your questions kind of, like I said, the salary or the wages line is the biggest thing. I'm just gonna run through your questions and then I'll explain, I guess, let me do it this way. Let me explain why we're asking for those additional man hours. It's 6 hours. Currently, we staff 2 paid people from midnight to 6 p.m. 365 days a year. In last year's budget, we added 6 man-hours and adjusted the schedule. Originally, the original paid staff started out as 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. It grew to 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Then it grew to 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. with one person on from 6 p.m. to midnight. We were missing, I don't know, I don't have the data on that. That was the previous administration. But we were missing an enormous amount of calls. And to highlight that, I did pull up some data from the 2022 to 2023 fiscal year. We had a total of 617 calls in the previous fiscal year. 427 of those were EMS calls. And we missed, so to speak, we couldn't crew 47 calls, which is 11% of the, and that's strictly EMS. That doesn't include the fire stuff, just 47 calls. So it's
Right, but when you
11%
say
of our
crew,
EMS.
Yeah,
If you do the math out, that's roughly $23,000 of possible revenue. That's one thing. But it also means that somebody had to wait an extra 10 to 15 to 20 minutes for an ambulance.
right.
So when I took over as chief, one of the things I did in the previous fiscal year for 23-24, which is what we were now, is I asked for the additional 6 hours for funding, and I changed the schedule. So we now staff midnight to 6 p.m.
Good.
As of right now, as of today, we have had 386 calls from the fiscal year. So we're well on track for the 600 number. 235 have been EMS, and we've missed 16 calls, down to 6.8%. Better than 11, but still not.
And you're partway through the year.
And we're partway through the year. Now, again, that's strictly EMS. That doesn't include calls where we were already on a call. That doesn't include calls when we were out of service for whatever maintenance of those. That's
Yeah.
strictly when the ambulance is there and we can't staff it. And of course, it doesn't take math genius to figure out that all those are occurring between 6 p.m. and midnight, because that's the volunteer. So we talk about this like all the time. Volunteer recruitment and retention is a problem. The bottom line is, if we keep going, we're gonna probably miss someone in the neighborhood of 30 calls versus, but if that 7% holds up, 28 calls for the year.
I saw that you had something in your write-up for the, or actually your,
The citizen.
for the citizen about volunteers
Right.
and program.
We're trying really hard. I mean, just to put it in perspective, an ambulance call now, if you transport, is anywhere between 90 minutes to 2 hours. And if you transport somewhere other than a local hospital, i.e. Hartford,
Right.
it can be 3 to 4 hours.
Right,
So, you know, you kind of have to, if you go home from work and then you go on an ambulance call, it's not 35 or 40 minutes
No.
anymore. And somebody jokingly said yesterday or the day before in a meeting, well, part of it is all the paperwork we have to do, and they're not wrong, but there's a lot of things to it. It's not just that.
Mhm.
So that's why the department asked for those additional 6 hours, which is really 12 man-hours. And then I thought, like I said, your questions were good, and I understand. I mean, I hope I explained them, but the line item, the current budget request and wages, the current includes the current full 4-time firefighter EMTs, midnight to 6. That is correct. And the current 7 firefighter EMTs who are part-time. That is correct. And I did, you can read the whole explanation, but basically one of the things is that, and it's basically covered in part E of your question, but when we talk about firefighter schedules, there's multiple ways to do it. So when we built this budget, we built it based on a 24-hour shift and a 48-hour off block. So what we refer to as 24 on, 48 off.
okay,
There's other ways to do it, but one of the things that requires is more manpower, which means you have to hire more people. In a perfect world, that would be easy.
Yes,
Not so easy right now. So we use that as a basis because that's kind of the minimum of what we would need to do. So. We don't, the stipends in Ashford are strictly for volunteers and it's the tax abatement. And
understood.
we have a requirement by ordinance that they have to meet 15% of calls, 50% of meetings. There's no wiggle room. That's it.
Right.
Trust me, I have that discussion a lot. So yes, a $1 raise in there is for everyone across the board. I actually just lost a full-timer today to another department.
Sorry.
And it's not your fault. So we're constantly doing battle, and fortunately, it's not a local department, so I can't even blame them, it's somebody else, but.
Well, even doing that only equates to 18,144.
Right, it's not a big.
In the grand scheme of things, it's,
Right, so the request is to add, and your question was, the request of 2 more firefighters, 6 p.m. to midnight, and like I said. It's a yes, but no.
It's
We're looking
wherever you
at
put them.
24 hour, right.
Yeah.
But it's 12 man hours and 12 man hours cost.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that will, in that request, it's in there, but it isn't in there, and I explained it in the email. We're trying to create some type of benefit package for these people to get some attention. One thing we don't have is any type of sick time or time off or paid vacation. So in my profession, we have PTO days, so you can use them for anything. So I said, we can provide PTO days for these people based on their schedule. You earn the time. So basically you're going 12 hours for every month of duty, so to speak. So 6 full 24-hour shifts a year.
you said you earn 12 hours per
12
month?
hours per month, yeah, half a day. So it's 6 per year.
That's different than what we do here for the employees. You earn 8 hours a month,
A month. Yeah,
yeah,
which is 1 day.
right,
So-
one workday.
Right,
yeah.
but see, for me, for them, a workday is a 24-hour shift, so it's essentially half a workday per month.
Do these people have other jobs?
Yes, most of them do. Yes.
Well, I'm just making
Most of
sure they have some kind of benefits from
That's
somewhere.
why we have 7 part-timers and 4 full-timers. So, and again, it's in this explanation, but the department looked at it and said, the odds of everybody taking all 6 days and throughout the year are slim. So we think that the adding of the hours and the additional revenue from the ambulance would cover that, so it's not really included in this.
Okay,
So, if you look at your breakdown for salaries or for wages.
Yeah.
The actual yearly total is 451,120, and in our wage line, we only ask for 450,000, and that's because.
only.
Only, but there's no way to actually predict how many call. I mean, I can use the data we have, and
Mhm.
that says that we should bring in 23,000 additional revenue. But if you have only, instead of 16 or 47 calls, you only have 10 calls extra or 20 calls extra, it's only half of that, so 10,000. So you're kind of flipping a coin, and I can only use previous year's data. I have no way to use, I don't have a crystal ball. So that's the way we put it together.
So, as a 501c3, you file with the state every year.
Yep.
Correct?
We file with the state and the IRS every year. Yep.
Yeah, is that a big report or a small report?
I
Do you
don't know,
know?
I give everything to the accountant and say, have a good time.
I would
It's actually pretty thick. It's like probably 10 or 12 pages. I
10 or
guess.
12?
Yeah.
Okay.
It breaks down, it really, if you've ever done a 501c3 thing, it breaks down wage costs, expenses,
Right.
and then revenue and
Right.
offset.
Does that run on the same fiscal year as us?
Yes, use the same fiscal year as you do. I think in your email, I actually referenced it because we've always been, if you look at the filing, we're anywhere between, what's this, $90,000 and $30,000 in the red every year.
Yes, and that was, I think to me, that was the most enlightening part of this.
Yeah.
Which was when you got to what were really actuals. You
Right,
could see that they far, that they exceeded.
And if anybody asks me, I'm
Every
still
year.
trying to figure out how we did it, so I
Yeah.
haven't figured that part out. Because up until 22, 23, I wasn't involved in any of this stuff, and I took over in mid-June of 23, and the ad administration side was still being handled by Mr. Fletcher, so.
You took over then and your life has never been the same.
I took over that part in, I can't remember, August. I don't remember. Yeah, you're right. I can't remember. See, it's been never been the same.
Uh-huh.
So.
Catherine,
My
Yes.
rundown.
Yes,
Yeah,
I got a couple of quick questions and a couple of quick comments.
sure.
Paul, as it relates to the missed calls, do you have an average cost per call in your mind? That
average cost per call?
For a run.
Yeah.
No,
for the user? No?
no, and that's a very, very,
It's a type of call, isn't it?
yeah, because that's
Type and duration.
Well,
yeah,
I know,
very difficult. If you do it that way, it makes it very, it seems easy, but it's not a very good metric. Because a basic life support medical call is far different than an advanced life support medical call, is far different from a car accident to a life alert alarm that it turns out to be just a lift assist. So if you do it that way, it makes it seem like that every call is the same, and it's not. And it's actually, there are towns that have done that, and I don't do it on purpose.
well, I think I had mentioned to you earlier in the year that I had one resident contact me. He
Yes,
said the average cost for an ambulance was $5,000 to $7,000 a call.
that is
And-
completely false.
And
How much
And
did you
I-
say?
I-
5 to
I-
7,000 a call?
Didn't I give you that?
well, it turns out this particular person was talking about some calls that he was familiar with for his family. And I believe the transport was to Boston.
Well, we didn't transport them to Boston.
And it also involved ALS, advanced life support, and it was a lot
we
more
didn't transport
complicated.
them to
And
Boston.
even with that, I think, Paul, from what you told me, the call was less than half of that.
It had to be a helicopter.
So I was I'm trying to pull it up here, but
Basic ELS.
As a fairly recent ambulance rider,
yeah,
kind of. There's a tremendous difference between what the commercial services charge.
oh, correct.
Because when I saw the bill for my transport from Wyndham to Hartford, it was flooring. It was, because it's just totally different. So that may be what whoever it is talking about, commercial service charges.
Yeah, I went, when you asked me that, Bill, I had pulled up all that data. Basically, the numbers are gonna be off a little bit, but an ALS call, the state sets the amount we can bill. And it's less than 22, I wanna say less than $2,200, I might be a couple off, but it's not 3,000, I can tell you that. And BLS is less than 1,000. That I don't have any say in that. They literally send me a form every year that I have to sign that says, you agree to this, and you don't have a choice.
Well,
So
there are those out there besides I guess my question was, is there any way to judge the revenue impact of not being able to make either 7% of your calls or 11% of your calls? Does that affect your revenue projections?
well, it does in the sense that, yeah, that's what I was saying. I'm missing those 47 calls last year is about a $23,000 loss,
Yeah.
right? So one thing we do is we take the total number of transports and the total revenue, divide the total revenue by the total number of transports and say the average dollar amount for transport is between 500 and 550. Because I'm a conservative type of person. I use the $500 number because if I get real happy and use 550, then I think I'm rich. So I take that $500 times 47, you get 23.5, I think it is.
Okay.
So that's what we potentially lost by not making those transports. I just figured this out with the president of the fire department this afternoon because we were going through these numbers again. And I said, that's 48 man hours that we could have covered, or X amount of payments for an ambulance or X amount of equipment, however you want to look at it. So yes, there is, in that sense, there's a loss, if you will. So right now, we're at 16 missed calls. It's roughly just under $10,000 that we potentially given away. Now, unfortunately, not every transport generates revenue. And
Sure.
not every, unfortunately, not every ambulance call is a transport. Some of those ambulance calls are either it was a mistake or it's somebody just needs assistance, and we don't bill those. We don't bill no transport calls. We only bill transports, and we don't do collections. So we only bill the insurance company, basically.
Well, looking at the missed calls, the way we're talking about it right now is looking at it in a business sense. You know, you may also have somebody that looks and says, well, look, they make 89% of their calls, so they make 92% of their calls. You know, the downside is that may be the case statistically, but if it's you yourself or your loved one that has to wait another 10 or 15 minutes for an ambulance to get
Right.
to your house in emergency,
Right.
it becomes much more critical.
Let's just say the
And,
price is precious.
Correct.
you
And
know,
that is the case, right? At 16 doesn't seem like a lot in 8 months, but it's 2 a month. And if you were one of those two, I think your attitude might be different. And
Yeah.
your thought process might be different.
Right.
You know, and
Yeah.
the
And-
other part of that is, again, not every call is the same. So if one of those two, or even 1 or 3 or 5 of those 16 calls was truly an ALS, you know, minutes or seconds, like that's a lot.
Yeah.
And really, you know, we talk about when we purchase equipment or go through things, we talk about what's the cost benefit ratio, et cetera. Like we have equipment that we might not have used for the last 5 years, but we have it because if it can save one person, it
Right.
makes a difference,
Right.
you know? So
That was my
I mean,
first
you're
thought
talking
when I
about
heard.
you're talking about potential life and death situations on any call you get, and you don't know that until you get there. The only
Correct.
other thing I wanted to mention, Paul, and to the board, um, realizing the difficulties we're having in getting volunteers and paid staff. I know when we made our presentation to the Board of Finance last year, asking for 6 additional hours, we did give them a heads up that this year we would probably be looking or anticipating the fire department looking for additional hours to get the full 24-hour coverage.
That's good.
So there should be nobody that's surprised at this, although looking
Yeah.
at the financial impact of it is a little alarming.
Well, we have some
it
new
is what it
members.
is.
We have some new members on that board, so we'll make it clear that this was brought up last year as well.
Yeah, at least last year, probably for the last 2 or 3 years. But
Okay,
I know last year very specifically, it was brought up.
very
Bill,
good.
just to get back to your previous question about cost for transport. A BLS transport, we can currently bill $938. That's a state set amount.
938.
938. The state allows us to bill for mileage, so the mileage, I don't even know, is $22.81 a mile, apparently, is what we can charge. So depending on how far away you live from whatever hospital we take you to, that can, and for an ALS call, we are allowed to bill $2,016. But some of that money goes back to the paramedic, because we do what's called a bundle bill. That really depends on your insurance carrier.
Okay.
Because if you're not, I think it's Medicare, and one of them we bundle bill, the remainder are billed separately, so they'll get two bills. I don't have any control over the paramedics cost.
Mhm.
So I can just tell you that, like, for instance, this person went to Wyndham Hospital and their bill was less than $3,000 for the transport. And ALS. And in this case, this was a BLS transport, and that person, I want to. Generally speaking, most people don't see a claim or a bill for more than $250 once insurance is involved. So out of pocket, some of the new commercial carriers, that differs because of your high deductible plans. So if you have a plan like I do, that you have a large deductible, your first, whatever it is, 2,000, 5,000, you get billed for it.
Mhm.
So, but generally, like the Medicaid, Medicare plans, or any of the, I guess you would call them now, the premier plans or whatever, the gold plans, $250 is the most I've seen people get an actual bill from us.
All right.
That by the
Thanks,
time
Paul.
we're done drilling everything down and contractual allowances and everything else, that's why we only can count on $500 per call per transport route.
Sorry, was that 938 plus 2281 a mile?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. 938 is the basic charge. Basically, that's,
Yeah.
we show up and do our thing
Yeah.
and take you. And the 2281 is a mileage charge.
Thank you. Anything else you'd like to say about the budget?
I don't have
The
anything else.
request.
The only other thing I could say is that, it is a big shock, and I know we have a lot of stuff going on, and there's we can explore options with reducing some of that hourly and stepping it. So do a 3-hour ad this year and a 3-hour ad next year. But that goes back to what Bill said, right? How many calls do you want to miss? And I don't want to make it sound like that,
Yeah.
but I changed the paid staff hours to try to allow the volunteers not to have to get up at 2 a.m. to do a call and all that other stuff. And I've been working very hard with some groups in the state to try to figure out how we can get more volunteers to come in and participate.
It's too bad you're not located next to a high school.
Right. Well, we tried to work with E.O. Smith.
Yeah.
It's just very difficult. And the other problem is that the people don't work in town anymore. They don't stay home anymore. So that's why, again, we moved it from 6 to midnight. But if you don't work locally or within a 15-20 minute drive and you have an hour commute, you don't want to be up till midnight.
No.
And the other problem is we've created some mandates, if you will, or requirements that are very difficult to achieve. Depending on which class you take to become an EMT, it could take you 3 months to, I think they run them out to 6 or 7 months now. And that's a lot of time you have to give up. The fire school is 2 weekends a month for 6 months. It's a lot of time. So, besides the cost.
Yes, Bill.
I just heard this last week. I was talking with a few firefighters and everything from other towns. And apparently some of the towns in a measure, and I don't know, I understand that this only started about a year ago, but some towns they're offering financial incentives to their town employees to volunteer on the fire department. Have you heard of that being applied anywhere around here, Paul?
I am not. I don't know anything about it.
I'd never heard that. I don't think it would have too much of an impact because we don't have much of a paid staff.
Right.
But I would imagine a town the size of Mansfield or Manchester or something like
I
that.
don't, I've not heard of that. I do know most municipalities, if you're a volunteer, will allow you to go on a call. Some of them, it depends on the nature of the call, but I've never heard of that.
Well, I think there's statute that DPW employees can go on calls, if I recall right.
Our
The
town has
person that was explaining this to me didn't necessarily said they had to go on calls, but they had to have so many hours a year or every 6 months with the fire department or EMS in order to qualify for a bonus.
Right, I do know what you're talking about, and that's not during work time. It's
Correct.
for companies that encourage, and I'm sure municipalities as well, encourage participation in volunteer
Your own time.
programs, right? So if you volunteer for the ambulance or the fire department, or might even be the Little League or whatever else, they will give you they will provide a bonus to you for doing that. There was a gentleman that I worked with, it wasn't in the fire department, it was another thing that's what he was doing. He was volunteering his time in a program because his company would, whatever the stipend was, say $500 or $1,000
Yeah.
or what, it might have been more, but yes, that I have heard of. I've never heard of it done for town employees, but it certainly is a possibility.
When I think of public works, I think of the god awful hours that they have to work
Well, the problem is
when there are
that
different things that come up
if
in
we all-
town.
I mean, if it was a
Weather
major
related.
incident, it's one thing, but then half the time for those things, we're all working together anyway.
Yeah,
I mean, we don't, it's not like we have a very large, it'd be different if you had a 30-man public works department, but
Right.
we have a 5-man public works department, and one of them already is a member and responds. So, like, if you,
Close a road.
yeah, but that's the thing is that, most of those larger scale incidents, if it's on a town road, they're involved anyway, because
Yeah.
we need assistance.
right.
So, I think the bigger thing is in general, the discussion has been for the last probably 5 years now. How do we get people to volunteer and how do we promote volunteerism? And like you said, the article we did this month is trying to promote that and,
Right.
just kind of show what it is, not only what you get, what you give out of it, but what you get out of it. I mean, if you want to become an EMT, you get skills training. If you want to become a firefighter, you get skills training.
You want to make a difference.
You want to make a difference, help your neighbor. You can be involved in town and really in the big picture, yes, it's a lot of time and a lot of effort, but there's a lot of reward to it as well. I mean, I've been doing it for well over 30 years now.
Yeah.
So, but it's a big hill to climb right now. Unfortunately.
Okay, any other questions about the budget submission?
Thank you very much, Paul, and we appreciate what you guys
Yeah.
do,
Well, thanks for having me. up
Yes,
here.
we do.
guys
appreciate-
and women.
And I also appreciate the fact that you have been trying to look at things in a much more proactive manner than we've had before, and trying to straighten out some things and trying to keep track of, actually make a good track of what you've got and when it outdates and all of that. That's
Yeah, and before. I
really
forget, I had
important.
Three couple things I was gonna mention real quick because I found out about them. Just.
Please tell me something good
It
news.
is good news.
Oh,
The service truck, the cabin chassis from the ARPA funding,
yeah,
it is completed and should be shipped within the 30 days. So we expect to have it at the dealer sometime in mid-March. It will go out the department's taking care of the rest of it, but we're gonna send it out for the body, et cetera, and then it'll come back to us and we will finish it. I met with one of our usual vendors for turnout gear. So
Yeah.
we're working on quotes for that. I want to get different quotes for different gear and then we'll decide which one is going to fit our needs best. So that's where we're at with that.
very
Paul,
good.
have you heard anything from J&S yet about our radios?
Oh, yes, actually, that is some other good news. I
Radios?
just saw them today.
Radios?
Thank you, Bill, because I spaced on that. Yes, the state while the build out is not complete, the state has authorized the programming of the DPW radios and the fire department radios with the DPW programming part, and there's some other stuff they can put in ours. And he's going to get the radios programmed, and he will be in touch with DPW and with me to get start installs. As they get,
So no more dead zones?
well, hopefully. The
You
build
might have
out,
one left.
I talked with somebody else about the build outs, and I think they said Troop K is next, and then it'll be Troop C. And then Troop D is like somewhere down the line, and we're kind of like in the middle there, unfortunately, so we'll see what happens. But for the fire department side, it's not, the state isn't the only one that's involved, it's also our dispatch center. And they're working on their end of it. So hopefully, I'll be optimistic and say maybe by the end of the year. We'll be fully operational with everything on our side, but the DPW should be done by early summer, if not late spring.
What's it going on, 3 years now, Paul?
Yep, yeah, you can, we're recording. I was gonna say, you can blame the state on that, but that's the truth.
Yeah.
And if anybody's on from the state, I apologize, but it's true. Sorry.
The truth hurts.
Yeah, the truth hurts.
Thanks, Paul.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, moving down, boards and commission appointments. We still have one regular member vacancy that expires in February of 25, and then Inland Wetlands Commission, they need to fill a regular member vacancy for, that expires in June 1st of 2025, and then a vacant alternate member seat, which expires June 1st of 2027. And I haven't heard any names come up for this. And then Zoning Board of Appeals, one alternate member seat term, which expires November 5th, 2025. The next thing on the agenda is to review the request to alter transfer station hours. And my apologies, Bill, I didn't realize that you were going to be on Zoom. I did. Hey, that's not a bad idea. Let me just see. I have to get a copy for myself. So I'm going to, I just want to speak to it, and then I really don't want us to make a decision tonight because we still have to make sure that we've got this down straight. So Bill, I'm just gonna hold this up for a second. Looks like this. Okay, and what you'll see, what I'll tell you is that up here is what the union contract says. And here's what they're actually working, and here's what they propose. So what they're actually working doesn't match the union contract. The 4 hours are not being held on, well, the weekly cleanup, if you will, are not being done on Mondays. They've been incorporated into their days, Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday. And I think the biggest culprit is on Sunday, their cleanup period is from 4 to 6 p.m., especially in winter hours. It's dark, et cetera, et cetera. They, but it's 2 hours, and they cannot fill those 2 hours with enough work. So under the proposed hours, the third thing that's shown here, when you look at the union contract and you look at the hours currently being worked, the public hours are 20 hours a week. In the proposed hours, what they'd like to change is that the public hours would be 24 hours a week. So that's 4 extra hours for our people in town who have transfer station stickers, I might add, that they would have access to use the transfer station. What they're talking about is basically a half hour on each end of the day, before and after, only half an hour each time for Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday. So that eliminates the thing with the 4 hours at any time during the week. They feel that they're all very geared up about this. I will tell you that. What I have asked, but I have not had an opportunity to meet with the transfer station committee to put this in front of them. I think that's what we need to do first. But I needed to have something documented up so that we have something to look at, because everybody's been pretty much passing the information around verbally. So what
Sounds
I'd
good.
like to do is do my reach out to the transfer station committee, have them take a look at this, and then bring it back to you, to the two of you, for us to consider, and then pursue it with the union, which I don't think is gonna have a problem.
Catherine, can you put a copy of that in my box?
You bet.
It's already in your box.
Already in your box.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay, but I think this really kind of helps
Yeah.
clarify what the differences are. Because it's been.
What I like to do is, you know, when we have our further discussions on that,
Yeah,
talk about revisiting a couple of policies that we have up there also.
I mean, one of the issues I see here is, I mean, we expressed that, basically, typically, most of our hauls are done Monday through Wednesday, right?
Right.
And we're not really giving much time on Sunday if they need to pack dumpsters or move dumpsters or do whatever they have to do. We only give them a half hour.
well, they're down below when they're dealing with the dumpsters. My bigger concern would be if they're up on top doing something with some of the machinery
Yeah.
while people are there.
Yeah.
But what I've heard so far in terms of an answer back on this is that no, they're only doing, you know, the work down below while people are there.
Good.
And so work on top that would be done afterwards. So I think it needs to be monitored.
Mhm.
And definitely on Bill on revisiting some of the policies. I think that would be very good.
Yeah, I've noticed there, and I know it's worse this time of year, but lighting there, I try to facilitate a few improvements on lighting, but I think we've got to revisit, particularly in that back area. I know when that loader is in operation, sometimes there's people just flying through that area, and it's very, very dark. But those are things we can talk about.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next is act on approval of Woodward Cemetery deed. Chris, that's the deed you brought in earlier to me tonight?
Signed on it.
Yep, it's for the purchase of 2 plots.
Okay. And we need a motion to approve that?
Yes.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any more discussion? All in
Are
favor?
those local folks?
Are these local folks?
I'm sorry?
Are these local folks that have asked for the deed?
Yes, they live in town.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Bill, I'm gonna leave it in your box. You need to sign it.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
motion passes. Thank you very much. Tax refunds, do we have any?
No.
Okay, agenda items for upcoming Board of Selectmen meetings. Maybe I'll throw in here. Tomorrow night, we have the capital projects improvement committee meeting. What because we don't have a truly solid feel for what's going to be in CNR, and we've gotten some information about what's in our undesignated fund, but we don't know how it's going to be handled in terms of going into CNR or whatever. There's also monies that have come back or are coming back from the installation at the school, where we put up what, in total, we put up 200 and something thousand, and the school put up half of it. We put up the other half. Where those
Well,
that
we
come
put up
back,
120, they put up 120
yes,
on the tank replacement.
right,
And then I don't have it in front of me, but we also then had budgeted money for the generator replacement.
yeah.
And we ended up getting insurance reimbursement on the lion's share of that.
Exactly, and so the Board of Finance will ultimately, once they have the information, make a decision on whether they want that to go into the designated fund, well, it goes there first anyway, or whether they want to apportion some of it out to the schools unexpended education, the 1% fund.
Non-lapsing.
If I had an opinion about it, I would say yes, we went in even Steven, we should come out even Steven. Okay, so that is for the meeting tomorrow night, we won't have the information that we need to be confident in terms of what can be supported. What I think we need to do is just make sure we've got everything prioritized. Everything that's a must-have is clearly identified as a must-have, and that's what we're gonna be providing to the Board of Finance until we have a better feel for what's gonna be in CNR and otherwise. Does that make sense? Okay, I think that would be fair.
Now, Catherine, our budget meeting Saturday, 9 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
The, okay, so for our upcoming meetings, we have that one. And the capital improvement one tomorrow night. We have the selectmen one on Saturday. If we get into a bind in terms of trying to, pare down the budget a bit, then we might have a special meeting next week, but it's unlikely. I just would like to share with you that it is virtually impossible to put the budget together properly, have the right numbers without any mistakes in them, when we only have a treasurer the number of hours that we have. It's just impossible. And Bill, I know you went through this last year, but you were also in a year of pretty much of a upheaval in terms of switching out our treasurer and going through it the first time with a new one, whatever was getting brought out of the system. I can just tell you that every day I have multiple questions and really am not able to talk with that person. You'd
yeah,
have to, document them up, and it's really uncomfortable. And other people don't have the answer. So, I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do in that department.
good.
Okay. And again, the other agenda item for our upcoming meeting would be to look at the ordinance changes that the Ag Commission has put forth. And that's with the information that we get from the assessor. So she'll have a write-up for us ahead of time. Okay, do we have anything else?
And do you want to add the blight ordinance consideration?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, and can we have a motion to adjourn so we can all go home?
So moved.
Roger.
8:28.
Bill, I
Second.
think that you're the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
8:28.
Thank you,
Very
folks.
much.
Good night. Thanks, Paul.
Good night, Bill. You're welcome.